All right. My name is Tyler. We're going to be doing what our house calls shotcalling, which is battlefield commanding. If you're in this and you have a range unit, please turn it off. So turn it to melee mode. What we're going to do is I'm just going to kind of go over some mechanics and the way that things work here. So first thing we're going to do is the quick way, which is I use you can set up your different commands, but I use the middle mouse button, and you can use those. That gives you some options you can do here. I don't use those very often, but that is an option that you can use. The other one is I'm pushing tab right now, and you can right click over here, and you got another drop down for four things you want. So you can give commands such as go here, pay attention, warning, send aid, capture this. The only ones I really see you using is the capture this because it looks attacky. Go here because it's a command where you want people set up, and then warning is hey something weird's going on over here. So I don't really ever use the send aid here, but maybe there's somebody else in here does. So
But
from
you want to, one second, you want to tell people that it's buggy though. If you use those commands on a point, like a supply point, it actually won't show the icon.
that
So you
is
want to do it like
yeah,
above the icon or
absolutely true. So actually, I'll just demonstrate the failure right now. So actually, that time it did work.
apparently it doesn't do it in Siege then
Okay,
for some reason.
but yeah, he is right. Sometimes it is buggy, and it'll say capture this supply point, and then it won't show the ping on the supply point. So you're like, which one am I supposed to do? But apparently, it's working in this open field battle. But oh well. So from here, you can tell. The other thing a lot of people take for granted is I know that those that are watching the live stream can't see the mouse, but it's down there on the bottom right. First of all, you have the name of the map, which says in this one is Mountain Pursuit. Actually, I can make that bigger, I believe. Nope. Wow, that's disabled here too. Anyway, there's a map down here in the bottom right. That's what in my house. That's what we use for our cardinal directions. I try not to say go over to the supply point. I will say go to the west supply point, and in this case, it would be the west central one. Instead of there's two home supply points, red, one blue, and then there's two in the center. So there's west, obviously, west on that map would be to the left. Uh, the other thing is pressing Z. So if you look, I've pressed Z. This is another mechanic which kind of gives you the overall feel for it. And other otter, can you please go back towards that other supply point that is probably red to you? And you'll see him drop off the map before he gets there because I have to have line of sight on him. There, he just dropped off my screen, so I cannot see uh, where he went. So as a battlefield commander, I think I know what's going on, but I don't because he is not there. At least he's not showing up, and you'll see people are disappearing
You
because
gotta
they're
move
getting up.
or you're gonna be kicked from the battle.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So that's just so one of the things you got to consider is not just am I basically in this particular case it would be to take their home point, which is where we would attack, moving and holding a supply point, whatever we need to do to make that happen. But you also need to think about where, especially during cities, uh, where the enemy is not necessarily where it shows, because if you don't have a hero that has line of sight of them, you're not going to know about it. So that's pretty much the general commands that you can use in game. So I'm going to kind of go over kind of the philosophy and things like that, especially as a new uh, shot caller. That's what I'll address it for the rest of this training because that's what I call it in my house. Uh, First thing you're going to do is you're going to make mistakes. You have to know that. The second thing you got to do is just give orders. If you give the wrong orders, that's fine. Hopefully your people follow those wrong orders and you learn from it. The worst thing you can do is not direct, because if you don't direct, whether regardless of whether the your team is doing the right thing or not, you're having no effect over it and you're not learning strategy. So, for example, if I had other people coming in the battle at my home point from here, I could see that. Well, first of all, somebody's behind me, but I would, if that wasn't the case, obviously they'd be coming from my home point. I would know that, hey, I got my shield wall set up, which I can see from here. There's 4 heroes over there by that cluster. They got a nice strong cluster that I need to do, and then there's cavalry ready to charge. So if I had people coming in, I would want pikes to the right to handle that cav, and then I want siege set up to handle that big mess of troops that they have over there. So I might put range over there behind my wall. Or I might send a cav charge over there, depending on what's over there and what cav I have. So the real thing is just give a command. So when somebody comes in, you're going to want to give a specific command. So if you look, I have, let's see, I'm going to definitely use that name, Papa Satan here. Papa Satan, I might give him a direct command. I think he's got cav, so it's not really relevant to this. But I might say, Papa Satan, I need you to head east with your cav or whatever unit he has. I didn't pay attention to what unit he has.
Copy that. Heading east with cav.
There you go. So he would head there and do whatever that. Basically, if they were going to have a cav battle over there or whatever. The important thing is that I gave a clear order. He knows exactly who it was. I used his name. I told him what unit to bring and where to go. So that's what he's going to do. And now, let's say I don't know what's over there at that other supply point, because I know that there's 5 heroes here. I might work and get somebody. Well, there they are. But let's say I don't know where they are. Maybe they're at that east supply point. I might send a cav squad over there just to look. So, as I said, I can view the whole map. So the first thing you got to do is not sit still this long. But so giving commands, the quality of your commands is going to dictate performance. Now, once you've been grouping together with people for a long time, I could just say, go east or take your cav and scout that area, and you'll have shorthand with those types of people. But it's your responsibility as shotcaller to give concise orders, because if it's misconstrued, then it doesn't matter what you say, because they're going to do what they hear, not what you say. The second thing is, obviously, I'm going to not really go over too much of the units, because I've got the other trainings that we've done with that. You know, how to move shield walls, how to pivot around them and walk with other shield walls, how to protect them with pike and all that other stuff. So this is going to be less about actual unit and more about the grand scheme of things, as far as how to convey your orders and how to set yourself up
to Keshiks. For the Keshiks.
Set yourself
I
up
have
for success.
ceasefire on Ripons.
Oh, okay.
So that is kind of the general philosophy. Now, one thing you're obviously going to want to do is, so now I'm going to be running around. Let's say that there's obviously, I've only got 3 people here. So if I'm in the battle, I try to not hit Z as much as possible, because that's one less person paying attention to where it is. I'll definitely hit it and go back, hit it and go back. I do that a lot. You can also hit tab. It's just faster. It's just not as zoomed in. So, and you can't really see who is where. It just shows dots. So, I mean, you can kind of, but you can't really see for the enemy. So, for example, from Z, the benefit of Z is I know that, hey, there is a glaive over there at the west supply point.
You can also give commands from Z.
Yes, you can. And it's actually a lot easier to give commands from Z. Oh, one thing that I always struggle with at the very beginning, if I'm especially in strategy mode. So strategy mode is you'll go to your map, and I can't go to my map here, but when you go to your map, though, you'll see if you're a marshal or above, you can basically go to the Z mode on any battle pretty much any battle. If you've declared or you're being attacked, you can basically get to this screen from the strategy mode. There we go. One thing to think about, though, on strategy mode is a lot of times it's inverted. So east is west and west is east. So the first thing I do when I go into strategy mode is I go off to the side and ping, and then I'll say what direction is that, and now I know, so it doesn't matter. If it's a map I know, then obviously I don't have to do that. But if I don't know, that's one of the first things I do. So the big thing is, right now, if I was going back to the Z again, right now they've got mass over here to my left, which is west. So if I I can take which we already own the supply point. So I would have to look at what we have and where I'm going to go. Now, if we have the advantage, for example, in this particular case, we're cavalry heavy, so we are going to be fast. So if it's in this case 3-on-5, I would just send the 2 cav units to go cap the supply point, while I use my shield unit to die as a martyr on that other one. Because as they straggle around, one of their units is going to be faster as they go from where they are now over to their home point to defend. So they're going to get straggled out, which means those 2 calves, if they were moving together, could hit in unison or do a good cav charge while they're all spread out. Again, that's more unit specific, but what I try to do is I try not to win points. For example, I don't like I win areas. So to project the area that I'm in now, I'm actually going to do it. I would advance, and ideally I'd have pike and range backing me up and things like that. So I would advance to cover more ground, and then on the map, now I'm just inching my way closer and closer so that eventually I can cover things. So with the cav that I have, obviously cav are better from flanking attacks and charging. So they might be going to the east and west and trying to pincher them as these guys come in to engage me if they were to come in. You just kind of wait for that. The big thing is to react to what they're doing. So if the people that are not on my team, you could just kind of move around, and I will kind of give you a quick example. So I might say, Seder, keep eyes left. I got a short sword. Things like that. So now you see he's shifting over, and he's keeping eyes on that short sword because he might be setting up a big siege to get the high ground to shoot down on us. And if he can engage, he will. You see how Papa Satan is going around to flank. So now they're in a vulnerable position, the red team, even though we're outnumbered. I'm pivoting here. I'm holding the line where Seder is. He could easily come back and help me if I need it. If 2 or 3 units hit me, he can hit them from the side. And same with Papa Satan. So what we're really doing is now, I know you can't see my my mouse, but imagine a line going from Papa, me to Seder, and that is the ground that we are covering. So now you see how the Zen fell back. That's the short sword. So if Saber were to move up, you can see that there's a enemy cav moving in the trees, but now we're moving that line forward, so we're advancing. And see now they've all shifted over because Papa's faster. Now Seder could slide all the way over through and capture that point, and I can move up to this direction, which I can't. I wish you could move from the Z menu, but you can't. So now I'm moving up because this would be a good way to take that while he's got him distracted here, he being Papa Satan, and then we can move to take this supply point. So that's just kind of an example of how to do it. A lot of people will ping and say, hey, go. Another example would be, this is our goal. Why is it not pinging? There we go. This is our goal, so now everybody knows what it looks like. And that's pretty much the gist of it. I try to work on areas and function. It's a little bit different in a city battle. You just need to make sure that no matter what, you have somebody on every wall. If you're in the wall defending stage, which is what you start off at. Unless you're attacking, then you need to have somebody. You try to hide and mask your numbers. Dual blades are good at that because they can disappear, and when you're in the Z mode, you can't tell the difference between somebody who disappeared and somebody who you lost line of sight of because it looks the exact same. So that's kind of what dual blades, in my opinion, are good at on the going around and ninja capping supply points and things like that. Not to mention the assassination and the obvious. That's pretty much the gist of it. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to get some kind of input from some of the other shot callers here I've got from other houses. Feel free to introduce yourself, by the way. I'll go ahead and Seder, you can go first.
So I don't really speak too much on the tactics of each map since there's so many different types of ways that the maps can go. So I'd rather speak more on philosophy in terms of how maybe we do things. I think you mentioned before that you had people giving orders, and then whoever, even if they gave a wrong order, as long as people were following it, that was mostly you were saying. So more like the commander is omnipotent, correct?
It's okay to give feedback, but yeah.
So within my house, we operate sort of similar. However, essentially we give our entire team the ability to counter an order. But as soon as you essentially give your opinion, like say, we shouldn't do this because this. But if the commander says, no, we're doing this, or they reconsider, they're given the option to reconsider. But then after that, you follow the order. And I know the thing I wanted to point out was, at least on our house, even if you give a bad order and that order is incorrect or wrong, we give in the post battle a chance for everybody to essentially do it during a debrief to say, this is why I think this was a bad idea, regardless of the outcome, whether it was good or bad or whatever. They would give our house members the option to essentially say why that wasn't a good idea later. You can't countermand, you can't say fully force it and say, like, we're not doing it, but later on you get that option to basically say, why was this not a good idea? Or why was this a bad idea? Or something like that. The other thing I wanted to speak to, I guess, was if you find yourself in a commander's role, it's important for you to, the battles can get really hectic, especially city battles. And it's important for you to kind of understand what the capabilities of your team are. So you can give orders, you can say go left or right, but you actually have to have an understanding of what the units that your team actually brought are. So you can't expect people to function, like to move really fast to a direction, but they don't have the right
The enemy
units
has
for it.
declared war on us.
So I would say that it's important as a commander for you to understand what units are being brought, what your capabilities are, and also, like you said, be willing to make mistakes, but also be willing to listen to your team.
Yes, I think it's important to, if you make a plan and everyone's fully for that plan, you need to kind of go for it. However, it's also important to have some kind of, judgment from other people saying that like this might be not be the best idea, this might not be that. And if the shot caller, as we will call it right now, says otherwise, then that's just the end of it. Shot caller says no, that's it. If someone gives an opinion on saying this might not be the best idea and the shot caller happens to think they're right, then cool, go for it. But it's more important that everyone is on board to just going for the plan at hand.
There's
Sometimes
another thing I'd
it's
like to
not.
talk about is panicking. It's
And that.
really easy to start panicking if things are not going well or things are not going wrong. And then the other part is it's also easy to get tunnel vision. This has happened to me many times, where we will be doing a type of engagement during a siege battle of some sort, and I'll be really tunnel visioned on getting something done. So you really want to have people around you who can basically pull you out of that tunnel. There was one point, I believe, when we were doing a defense on a city, and I had us basically pushing real hard to defend the gate, and we almost lost the city simply because I was so focused on taking the gate until one guy said, Sater, you need to pull back. We don't have the capability to do what you're doing. And which mostly I'm trying to say is there's a thing to being a shot caller, but there's also, you need a support structure. You're not going to be able to go it alone. I think it doesn't work so well if you don't have those people there to kind of give you feedback while you're in the middle of the fight.
I agree with that as well.
The enemy
Well said.
captured the point.
Beats, you got anything for us?
I agree when it comes to having a shot caller and also having someone keeping an eye on making sure no one gets, as you say, tunnel vision, because when it comes to people getting so focused on one specific objective, sometimes there may be something happening in the background that you don't notice that some other people do. So even if you are the shot caller, it is also great to have those who are in your squad or those who are with you keeping an eye out, so you never know if someone is coming in for a flank, or if you never know if there's someone that is out of position. It's really good to have that group of people just having their eyes open, because if you're playing at it solo, it never tends to work out for you, because it can end up either being a 2v1 or just out out of proportion, just getting completely ransacked and flanked.
Additionally, it's very easy to get tunnel vision when you're using artillery. So if you are a shot caller using artillery, be especially wary of that
Yeah.
because using artillery makes it super easy.
I agree with that, especially one of the things I do if I am using artillery is during the reload, I instantly go to the Z. After I shoot, I step back a minute if I need to, and then I hit Z. That helps me out. Uh,
Or you can just deploy it for your team. That also
yep,
helps.
yep,
Yeah.
Another thing you want to look at is, and this is specifically, this is more structure related. You actually need to have a chain of command because the fact is, as a
Yep.
leader, you might die. We learned this the
Mhm.
hard way at one point because I pretty much did most of the heavy lifting in my house in terms of leading battles, and that backfired at one point when I got fielded before we had a real command structure, and we were going into a battle where people had an idea of the plan, but nobody was there to lead it. So it's actually important when you go into these larger battles. Maybe field battles are not such a big deal, but the larger battles to have a structure of these are the 4 or 5 people who are going to lead this fight if the person above them is not there. And as long as you have generally the same plan, you should be able to piggyback off them when you get back into the fight.
yep.
Mhm.
I'll just speak for us. Almost every battle we go into, unless it's less than a stack, we go 3 deep. So we have a primary shot caller and then 2 backups, and then the 2 backups usually whenever we even have your second and your third. To every battle we have 15 in, at least 3. Uh,
Yep. That's
the
really important.
Yep. Now that I think about it, and I hadn't really considered this before, but the strategy mode, it might be the best way for a new shot caller to get their feet wet, so to speak, because you're not actually in the battle. So you could focus on the big picture, and then you don't have these other pitfalls that we mentioned, tunnel vision, or not seeing stuff where it's coming, things like that nature.
Even for a vet shot caller, strategy mode can be useful because you can hop between battles.
Oh,
If you're
absolutely.
running, say, 4 or 5 stacks,
Yeah.
like what typically happens, like in YT, for instance, uh, you can't. It's helpful to have, the alliance lead loading in there and helping shot calling sometimes.
I would also suggest that whoever is leading your battles be recording. I can't tell you how many times I have running
Recording can't
records of.
lie.
I have recording of every battle that we've done this season and some of the ones previously, and I constantly go back to look at the battles. And like there are people in my house who are learning to shot call as well, and we send the video to whoever asks for it so that they can review it and see, okay, how did I do? What went wrong here? That's how you're going to learn where you fucked up in terms of your fights.
That's something I
Mhm.
don't do, and I think that's great advice.
I
I'm going
have
to start
never
doing
done
that.
that. Well, we've done a little bit because we had a streamer a while back and we would review his streams, but other than that, we've never done it.
Yeah, I think I
But
like
yeah,
that
it's not a
idea.
bad idea. That's a pretty good
OBS.
idea.
So if you stream, you can set OBS to record at stream quality, which is, I
Mhm.
believe, my battles tend to be about 2 or 3 gigs each. And so what I suggest you can do is, if you record with OBS at a relatively good quality, you can keep those videos, and then afterward, you just send those videos unlisted to YouTube. And then that way you don't have to keep them on your own hard drive. I have plenty of space, so I keep them on my hard drive.
Okay.
But you can just upload them to YouTube and keep them there as archives so that you can look
Hmm.
back on different fights.
Okay.
That's a good idea, actually.
It is.
Yeah, the biggest thing I think is using names. The Because the worst mistakes I've ever seen happen,
I
especially in defenses.
I am hurt. I need help. I
Yeah,
hate I.
I've
I
heard
or
over
hey
to
you
West.
or I need 5 over here. Well, yeah, you might need 5 over there, but if you're not using names, typically what happens, unless you have a full stack of vets, is you get 10 people going over there,
Yeah.
and so you over rotate and you
Yeah.
lose a wall.
Delegating the specific people to go to specific areas when it's needed is important.
Yeah.
So you don't have
So
everyone
saying
running
such and
everywhere.
so go west wall, or we use right, left, up, down. I prefer west, east, but we don't do that anymore because it confuses newer players for some reason.
So the
See,
other thing we have,
that's
let me let me quickly say another thing that we have. This comes down to style, a style of leadership as opposed to the other thing. In my house specifically, the way I lead is I lead via. I view the battle on the communication that I'm hearing. our house, it's a constant stream of information. People giving, I
Mhm.
spot a Nodachi into this thing over here. I this over here. So it's very important. It may sound like a lot of chatter, but it's really just communicating positions, enemy movements, and pretty much almost all the time I'm viewing as the shot caller the battle through my own mind's eye based on the communication that
Yeah,
I'm
the
hearing.
problem we personally ran into when we did that uh, was we would get newer players come in, they start listening to everyone else doing it, and they wouldn't have the judgment to actually do it properly, and then they'd end up yelling over the actual officers who were calling, uh, actually making calls, and we would end up with serious miscommunications
So
to the
they
point
we
where we
I
lost
get what you're
roles because
saying.
of it.
I get what you're saying. We've had that too, where we've had new people come up and over give information, but at the
Mhm.
same time, we found that those people tend to calm down within a 2 or 3 territory wars as they start to understand between having
Yeah,
the video to point out and the mentioning it in debriefing. Because as soon as that happens, that's what the debrief is for. We say, "Hey, such and such, this is what we saw. You need to give a little less information. It's less relevant information, and that's where the recording and the
yeah,
debrief comes in."
less chatter. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's fair. Personally, we do like Talamir said, we do a 1, 2, and 3, system. A chief shot caller and then 2 backups.
Yeah.
I It's definitely worked better for us when we switched to that as opposed to kind of the. But yeah, when we have a full stack of vets, we do it the more freestyle way.
Actually, I didn't see you sneak into the chat. Is there anything you wanted to go over?
The biggest, like I already said it, the biggest thing is names.
Okay.
Using names. I wrote down what else I don't
Names and
remember
the
what it was.
directions, not the here.
Names and directions. Sometimes when you use east west, all that, uh, it does confuse newer players until they get accustomed to it. So you can either stick to it or you can move on. Uh,
Yeah, I found that teaching new players that, the east west delegation and north and south is super important.
also, you really need to make sure that your shot callers are active within your Discord community. Uh, it's not 100% necessary, but it does help, especially with your newer recruits because they see you in there, they see you interacting with them, they see you playing with them, and that means that even if you do have a ton of people calling things out, when they hear the shot caller's voice, they'll generally follow it, even if there's other chatter.
Yeah.
Also, there also comes down to another thing. You can do all these things right, but if, as the shot caller, if you are not projecting, you will not be heard in the middle of a big fight. If
Yeah,
you are not
either have priority speak on or just yell over your peeps.
Not so much. I'm not talking so much. I'm saying that being assertive in the way that you're giving the
Yep.
commands, because some people may be so busy they're
Yeah,
not paying attention. So
yeah,
you
we have some
really
people
gotta.
if that would be okay shot callers if they were more assertive, but they're just not assertive. So, like we have some vets like that. They're just so quiet.
Cool. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions? We've got a lot of vets here, so be a good opportunity to ask. It doesn't necessarily have to pertain to shot calling. All right, here none. Wait, was somebody gonna say something? I saw somebody light up. I'm gonna call it. So I'm just gonna reiterate because we kind of bounced around a little bit. So if I was to make a blueprint based off some of the input I got here, uh, one, practice like you play. So you're in siege battles, even if you're queuing up solo, you can start practicing with your Z. You can start practicing with your pings about the map, things like that. Uh, Zero cost. You're already in the siege anyway. In fact, I had a quest or a unit quest majigger thing challenge to ping on the map. I don't know why, but whatever. Obviously, that was easy. But uh, the other thing is
What?
to go ahead and make your be assertive, like everybody pretty much here said. Make a decision. If you make the wrong decision, we'll discuss it later. But you need to make the decision because if it goes through and then it fails or succeeds, whichever way, uh, that decision is your learning experience because you said, hey, let's go do this. This is what you want to do. If you give a command and somebody doesn't follow it, then that's the training on their end that they need to do. So, and it's probably a little bit different in each house. It sounds like everybody here was kind of the same, but that's how you learn. So be decisive, make your decisions. I think every single one of us hit about communication. So, for example, if I was giving myself a command, I would be Talamir, take your pike militia to the west wall, and then I would take the pike militia to the west wall, and that's where I would be. So I gave a name, a direction, and a command with what I need. And if I didn't have my pike militia out, I'd be like, "Hey, I've got my monastics out. Do you want me to switch?" Obviously, if I'm going to a wall, I don't want to take my monastics, so I would switch out and then let them know, or her.
There are some issues that I have had and that I would probably want to bring up.
Okay, go for it.
In terms of there are some there is as we spoke about a little bit about flexibility of the commander. There's also the idea that you actually have to allow your people to actually function a little bit autonomously, because the last thing you want to do is actually ask for people to do things, and then you have literally everybody asking you what unit to bring for this or what unit to bring for that. So you actually have to find that balance where people have to function on their own. So you have to let people know that there will be times where if there's enough happening, you're going to need to make decisions on your own in terms of what to do or what unit to bring, because you may not be able to answer because of all the things that are going on. There was another
Correct.
thing that I wanted to say
That's
was,
true.
and this has to do with within the game, what you might want to do. What we found is if you are going to be the Shotcaller and you like to play the lighter armor classes, it might actually be a good idea for you to get off of those classes. The heavier
Yep.
armor classes like short sword and shield or long sword or glaive or pretty much anything heavy armor, you'll
Yep.
find it much easier to play as a Shotcaller while playing those classes because you're less likely to get gibbed.
Especially short sword, because you can
Yes.
essentially negate most of the damage. So if you are, paying too much attention to the map, so that you can shot call and you accidentally get caught out, you pop iron sides and you're probably going to be able to get out.
Absolutely.
Same thing with longsword and shield. You can
I
get healed.
actually played longsword and shield a lot, and I didn't want anything to do with short sword and shield, but I actually found in the commanding role it was actually easier for me to just
Yes.
short sword and shield just because.
Well, short sword and shield is going to out tank a long sword in the long run,
Mhm.
simply because
will.
it can negate too much damage.
The other
It
thing
will.
that I wanted to mention had to do with units. As a shot, if you're looking to be a shot caller in this game, unfortunately, you're going to have to play more than most people, because one of the best ways to get good at it is to actually learn what units do, which means
Yep.
getting units, leveling units, going really hard. I've only been playing about 3 months, but I've maxed out, I think, 30 or 40 units, a lot of golden area units. And I watch what people are doing and what those units can do. It's very important for you to learn what every single unit in the game does so that you can know how to use them.
And even if you don't want to go and actually get the unit, if you can find a vet that has the units, like we have a lot of vets, so if you can actually talk to them about the differences, how you use a certain unit, especially if you have someone that's like 15,000 plus or 1,500 plus, because they do exist. Pick their brain, even if you don't have the unit or you don't like using the unit. Make sure that you're at least consulting someone that does,
And if you
so
don't
you
have
know
it,
everything.
if you don't have access to those people, there's probably a couple that are in this chat right now, and
Yep.
you can ask it right here in this Discord. There's a question,
Yeah.
and I try to answer as soon as I can. If I don't know it, I ping. I've got probably 5 or 10 people that are higher level than me that or have different experiences that I do, and I will ask. Does anybody
Yeah.
need to see anything in combat? Because I know you guys got a long way to go back home. Actually, you guys will probably just hit your.
Oh, we're just going to press that
Yeah.
button that teleports us. We're good.
I forgot you don't have to run back.
Yeah, you assume I didn't pick up abandoned camps and things like that.
Well, if you didn't, it's gonna suck for you.
Yeah, I didn't pick up any purple schematics, so I'll just delete it all.
Yeah, I've never got one of those in
I
over a
have
year
a
of them
few
playing.
people that I know that have gotten those just randomly through.
I know, it
abandoned
makes me so
camps.
mad. I've never even gotten a
Makes me
legendary
mad, too.
roll on my weapon.
All right, we're going on
Whoa.
tangent. Let's
Does anybody have anything else about shot calling? I kind of summed up kind of what we're looking for: concise orders, decisive
To
orders. Go ahead.
to piggyback off all the things about light armor and being light armor in shot calling positions, yeah, it's not a good idea. It used to be back when dual blades
A
had
longbow
invisibility.
is fine,
That was a good thing.
actually.
Longbow is fine, but depending on what's happening with these nerfs coming soon, we don't know if
That's
it's going to
true.
be stamina or health being lost when you charge these skills from longbows. So I would say it'd
Oh,
be a good
that's a good
idea to
point.
go medium or heavy armor if you're going
Yeah.
shot calling.
Really short sword, honestly. It's a great idea to go short sword if you're shot calling. You don't have to, but it's pretty much the easiest class to stay alive on.
Correct.
I would pretty much just draw the line at heavy armor.
Yeah,
Same.
I mean, it's a generally good guide.
Or maybe some really defensive musket stuff.
Yeah. Musket with
Most
can
muskets are
skirmish
so busy.
escape.
Most muskets are so busy being pro gamers. I don't think they have time to shotgun.
That's a good
They
point.
are they're pretty much all
Packy
pro
does it.
gamers at this point.
All right, cool. That's all I got for the training. Does anybody else got anything they want to questions or anything before we wrap it up?